Humans are transitional beings, beings who are neither fully caught nor fully free, but are in the process of awakening. I find it helpful to think of myself this way. I'm in the process of becoming, in the process of evolving. I'm neither doomed nor completely free, but I'm creating my future with every word, every action, every thought. I find myself in a very dynamic situation with unimaginable potential. I have all the support I need to simply relax and be with the transitional and process quality of my life. I have all I need to engage in the process of awakening.
The program you are about to hear is fiction, science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction, fiction, fiction.
Relative salutations, cognonauts, and welcome to Exofathom. It's the show where we talk about mummies and ancient gods, ponder the mysteries of the cosmos, philosophize, and wonder about all kinds of spooky out there possibilities. I'm Ayla, and I'll be your host tonight. I'm joined by my loveliest of lovely co-hosts, Nick and Mike. Nick, how are you experiencing time these days?
Good question. Time is a flat circle, to quote Matthew McConaughey in True Detective. So,
All right.
but yeah, doing okay. Happy Monday night.
Awesome. And Mike, how about you? How's time feeling on your end?
Why did you ask me this question? It's a bit choppy, but it's going.
It's going,
Like-
huh?
Yeah, it's like rough ocean waters, I guess. Sometimes it feels like a lot, and then sometimes it's like a lull.
Yes. No, I hear you. I've also been feeling like time really slowed down and then it really sped up and everything in between, and it's weird. And it's also weird. I know a lot of us have said this in the past that the passage of time seems to speed up as we get older. And I don't know, would you two co-sign on that on aggregate? Like, do you feel like time is going faster?
Oh, absolutely, and I resent it 100%. I'm not happy about that fact.
Noted.
I don't like the fact that a year goes by in a blink of an eye nowadays. How I long for the days where I would count down till Christmas. I mean,
Right.
now I just sneeze and it's Christmas.
Right. Now it's like I paid off last Christmas and I got Christmas again. I'm
Yeah.
How about you, Mike?
Sure. I don't know. Some days feel really long, and then other ones just go by. But my sleep schedule has been wrecked, so that might be it. So maybe I'm like those 2 days have become like one day as I was when I was a child. But normally, yeah, time accelerates as you get older.
Yeah. Well, and the research supports that. They find that this unnerving phenomenon could be revealed by learning to, or what is it? Could be muted by more attentively savoring all of the familiar details of our lives. So there's a little story here. It's imagine a woman. She's well into her 7th decade of life, but still very mentally sharp. She's taking her grandson on his first walk on the beach where she has lived for years. The little boy hears the roar of the surf, the screech of seagulls. He sees sand and sandcastles, families under beach umbrellas, toddlers scampering away from the incoming tide, a carpet of tiny shells and garlands of shiny brown seaweed. He smells the briny metallic air. To him, many things happened. The grandmother, in contrast, experiences these details much less distinctly. This means that for her, just one thing happened, another beach walk. And I read that and I thought to myself, man, that seems to me to be a pretty good argument towards the mindfulness that we always hear about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and seeing things with a fresh pair of eyes as well, right? And, you have the
Hmm.
kid who's experiencing things. I think that that's why people like having kids, or you even think about like when you have a friend visit the hometown you live in, right?
Mm.
And it's like you go do the things that you would never go do. Like if I had friends that were coming from another country coming to like Los Angeles, I would take them to all the touristy stuff, the stuff that I would never do. But it's
It's true.
because there's a fresh set of eyes experiencing it that it's almost like you can experience it anew.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And those touristy sites would be less touristy, because you're all the familiarity gets wiped away and you're just re-experiencing things with your friend.
And that can make time just feel longer. Like I guess the,
Exactly.
yeah, your dilation, and time dilation changes. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. But what stops you from just enjoying the little minute details?
Touche, which you totally can. In the mindfulness research, they talk about slowing things down and trying to focus in on, just like the little details. And I do wonder about the touristy scenario, Nick, because, they also say that time flies when you're having fun. But we
Mhm.
know kids and people visiting new places are having fun too. And if they're in taking less familiar experiences, does that seem to counter what the research was saying?
I think it just becomes contagious, just like fun is contagious, you know. So
Fun is
um,
contagious.
yeah, and so like the way I see it is like if you have a kid or if you have somebody visiting you from a far off land, like it's all of the things that you've taken for granted, but because, as I said, you have that new pair of eyes looking at it, I think it's something, I don't know, something intrinsic in us kind of puts ourselves back in that state of seeing it for the first time as well. I don't know.
Hmm.
Maybe
Hmm.
we do a little bit of time traveling.
It's possible. It's possible. Mike?
Maybe like empathy, like extreme, like you're putting yourself in their shoes, and so you're experiencing it for the first time again. But it's like there's been times when like just walking down the street and you just look at the leaves rustle and the different colors on them, and
Mm.
it feels really nice to do that. But I guess as you get older, you have to remind yourself to do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just walking down the street.
Right. Right, 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 right. Yeah, and I think so there's this idea of um well, here, let me just read this. So as we get older, we tend to chunk the experiences that we've had into broad categories, bundling individual moments into larger, more generic groups in our mind. So the grandson's beach walk in his memory consisted of dozens of vivid individual experiences. But to the grandmother, these experiences are so familiar that they get filed as a single beach walk. And with age, we group experiences into broad chunks such as work or family or fun outings, according to a Kansas University psychologist. And this was a 2018 study. But so, as a result, to an older person, fewer things seem to have occurred in a given period. So it seems to have passed faster in retrospect. And so, just again, like, do we feel like that satisfies the question, or could there be more going on?
Hmm. I mean, it's a good explanation for it, but it also seems like something that could be trained out of. I mean, it would seem to me like Mike was alluding to, and while you're alluding to, this concept of mindfulness might be a way to retrain the brain to start to notice the small things in order to kind of, instead of amalgamate everything, set them apart differently. But I do wonder if like an older brain just can't do that.
Or like an older brain is just trained out of doing that for
Hmm.
so many years. I
Yeah,
hear that.
habitualized out of it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, there might also be a focus problem because if you've kind of done the same routine over and over, um, you may be thinking about something else and not exactly the walk, right? And I
Mm.
don't know if it's something that happens with age and as you get, did you as life throws responsibilities at you, and
Hmm.
just whatever life throws at you, or if it's like maybe just more of a good way to try to focus on the things that matter most. Like, so if you're in
Hmm.
your environment for the thousandth time, you don't need to focus on most of it, but you might need to focus on some animal hiding somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Something different in that environment, so it allows your brain to not think about all the minutia around you, and where mindfulness can help kind of like fight back against that, especially in an environment like a modern society where it's not, there's not as many dangers as there were before.
Yeah, like there's less need to be acutely aware of your surroundings, assuming you live in a nice area, of course. But yeah,
You know,
like
isn't that kind of funny too? Is like the concept of being acutely aware of your surroundings keeps you from being aware of your surroundings. It's just
right.
weird because like it does feel counterintuitive in a way, but yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you know, if you are used to an environment and you notice one thing that's off, that's the thing that you're going to focus on,
Hmm.
and you know, so yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean that is interesting. And like the contradictions, they definitely are there. And so here's another thing to think about is imagine the same grandmother, the same toddler, but one is on a beach in Santa Monica and one is on like the coast of New York or something like that. Because there was another study where the scientists observed how quickly bank tellers made change, how quickly pedestrians walked, and how quickly postal clerks spoke. The psychologists determined that the three fastest paced US cities are Boston, Buffalo, and New York, and the three slowest are Shreveport, Sacramento, and Los Angeles. So I wonder, why is there a geographical difference? Maybe
Hmm.
it's geographical, maybe it's cultural. I don't know. They
Might
didn't
also
really
be
talk about it.
electromagnetic.
Could be that. Could be
Hmm.
that. Could be proximity to the moon, man. But I thought that was interesting because, there's the perception of time going fast, going slow, and then there is our bodies of mass moving faster and slower. And I'm just curious, like, I wish there was a follow up study to say, if people in those different areas seem to experience things differently.
Mm. Yeah, I would kind of, it kind of reminds me of like being nearsighted or farsighted. Like people in urban areas tend to be more nearsighted because things are closer to them, whereas
Right.
people in more rural areas tend to be farsighted because they have to look out into the distance to see things. So, yeah, I mean, like humans are incredibly adaptive, and like if you live with things close to your face for too long, your brain will just say, "Well, we don't need the farsightedness." Like
It's true.
it doesn't make any sense for us to keep up the maintenance of the eyeball, for looking at things far away. So
The maintenance of the eyeball. No, it's true. It's true. Mike, anything to add to that?
Sorry,
I'm gonna.
just
Oh,
trying to figure out some fun sound issues.
oh
Um,
yeah.
I mean, have yeah, have you been to like when I went up to Shasta, how slow everything moved, right? And it kind
mm,
Mm,
of gives like I was felt like I was still moving at an LA pace,
yeah.
like that city environment type pace,
Hmm.
but that extra perception of time, that feeling of time dilation, it does let you like focus on the small things. So I can see where the environment has a huge, like the city versus rural areas will have a huge effect in that.
mm,
Yeah. Well, and so it gets a little bit more interesting when you think about time. So I have some fun time facts for y'all. It's just six of them. So one, time passes faster for your face than it does for your feet, assuming you're standing up. So Einstein's theory of relativity dictates that the closer you are to the center of the Earth, the slower time goes. And this has
Yeah.
been measured. So at the top of Mount Everest, a year would be about 15 microseconds shorter than at sea level.
You mean to tell me that if you just want to like beautify your face, you just need to do handstands for like a day?
Pretty much. Yeah. I
All
mean,
right,
you would beautify it by the equivalent of 15 microseconds
all right,
less time.
it's
But
fair
that
enough.
does add up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and so then when the dinosaurs were alive, there were 370 days in a year. The Earth's spin is getting slower because of the moon's gravity acting as a drag. And so the days are getting longer by about 1.7 milliseconds per century. In fact, there is actually such a thing called a leap second that we have to do every so often just to make sure that time stays on track, apparently. I didn't
Mm.
know this about a leap second, but it's kind of weird. It's not well advertised.
Yeah, it is a little strange, like the sloppy calculations. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
the things that we have to round up or round down, or we have to have a leap year every 4 years because somebody said that the calendar had to be this length, and that
right.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Um,
weird. And it's
uh,
funny too because like in calculations, if you're off by just a little bit, usually that throws everything off. And we're
mm,
just like, well, it's just time. We just made it up. It's fine. Like,
certainly, yeah. No, I mean it is very strange. Mike, are you there? Can you hear us? Uh
oh, Mike's having some
oh.
technical
He had to
issues.
drop out. Yeah, he'll come back then.
He will come
Uh,
back.
yeah.
What you were going to say, Nick?
Oh no, I just think it is interesting. Yeah, the way we kind of conceptualize time as this thing that needs to be very precise, and sometimes we have to add milliseconds or take off days or add days just so that we can have like our perfect little structure of what time is.
It's
But
so
really,
true.
it's kind of arbitrary.
Absolutely. Well, and then it gets interesting too when you start thinking about like time zones and you start thinking about like the seasonal, daylight savings time situation.
Mm.
Just because again, it's just like Arizona doesn't do it, but lots of people do it, and it's weird to me. It's weird to me that it isn't that it's so precise, but it's so precise in its error recalculation. I think that's what it
I
is.
still don't really understand the daylight savings time thing. I know that has to do with agriculture and stuff, but it's like why change it back? Or which is the normal modality? You know what I mean? Like, what's the normal modality for time? Is it supposed to get dark at 6 o'clock, and then we're like messing with time and making it so we can have sunlight at 8 o'clock, or is it supposed to be light at 8 o'clock, and like we're dialing it back?
Well, and then imagine you're in like one of those areas where it's like daylight for 11 hours a day or what, like 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's like, why even bother? It's just sunny all the time.
Uh-huh.
Um, thought that was kind of funny. Well, and so another fun fact about time is that there's no such thing as now as far as physics is concerned. That space and time are fluid, affected by gravity and your speed. But Einstein put it like this. He said, for us physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only an illusion, however persistent.
Mm. I heard an anecdote, and I don't know if it's just one of those internet things that went around in the early days, but I can't confirm this, so I apologize. But I thought I heard an anecdote about how Einstein came up with relativity to explain why he was late to something. And it was like it had to do with like him walking in the opposite direction of the way the train was moving. That caused him to be like a couple seconds behind or something like that. I don't know if that's exactly it, but I like to think in my own head canon, he was just trying to explain why he was late one day.
I feel like there's a book somewhere of like cute ways smart people thought of smart things, like the apple hitting the guy and like, oh, gravity, or
Hmm.
like Benjamin with the lightning. Like, I'm starting to question now, like, did these things really happen or are these just cute
Probably
stories?
not. Yeah.
It sounds good though.
It does. It absolutely does. Let's see here. Okay, so just three more facts. Let's see. So, because light takes time to reach us, everything we see is in the past. So, the sun you can see out the window is 8 minutes and 20 seconds old. And the light from our nearest star, Proxima Centauri, is actually 4 years old. Not just weird. I know this is something that most of us know, but it's still weird
Mhm.
to think about because it could be doing all kinds of crazy stuff right now, and it wouldn't be until 2025 that we were like, "Oh, shit, Proxima is going down," or something like that.
Yeah, it is. It is very strange. Like the concept of traveling through space also equals like being at a different time is
Yes.
very strange to me. It's very
Right.
weird.
Right.
I can't wrap my head around it very much.
Just behave like time doesn't exist. You'll be fine.
Right. Sometimes it feels like it's a better idea because I think about like going to a star. I'm like, how could, even if we could travel at the speed of light, it would take us 4 years to get the closest one. And then, but what if it's already dead and we didn't know?
Just run right into a black hole.
Yeah.
It's like I think it's Orion's left foot or something. The star
Mm.
that it's like red. It looks like it's dying, but it's
Mhm.
actually dead.
Oh,
Ugh,
God.
so sad.
That is
Yeah.
sad. So
We're
we're just
losing
seeing the
constellations.
last. We are. That's weird. Well, and so two more. There's a time passes slower the faster you move. So to Nick's point, if you flew to the star Sirius at 99% of the speed of light and then flew back again, the people you left behind on Earth would have aged more than 14 years or 17 years, but you would
Mhm.
have only aged less than 2.5 years. That I cannot get my head around. I just cannot get my head around that. Like you're saying, but even still, like, so you leave, you go somewhere. I guess it's just the speed of light. But the faster,
Yeah.
wait, time
Well, it's
passes
just
slower the
the
faster you
faster you
move.
move. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, that's why it's 99 because it technically, I guess, what you once you travel at the speed of light, time's supposed to stand still.
Weird.
That'd be pretty cool.
That would be
Mm.
really cool. Well, and then the last one is that time has not been around forever. Most scientists believe it was created along with the rest of the universe in the Big Bang 13.7 billion years ago, which is weird because the moment that time starts, then you have a second that passes. And so you have 1 second of the past, but there's no like past sub-zero beyond the past, right? Like there's just nothing,
Well,
then
I guess,
past, and then now, then future, which is weird.
yeah, but I guess that has to be at the point of the Big Bang, right? Like time couldn't have existed prior to the Big Bang because there was nothing to measure anything,
That's
So
if
like
you don't believe in
time is a measurement of matter across space in this, sort of instance, I think, right?
yeah, well, there
So
are
it's
some
like,
people that talk about like multiverses, and so you could have daughter universes, and so you could just say that like our Big Bang was really just the result of something else. And there's something before that and something before that, which again gets to the problem of what was before that. But, we'll get into this a little bit more about like linear and circular time.
and if we live in a desert universe, who cares? We're the only ones keeping the time.
That
you
is
know,
It's
kind of sad.
it's important to us,
it
okay?
is very important to us.
Well, now I feel like we're on like a prisoner globe, and we're all in our cells marking our little days and weeks and things like that. Like that is kind of creepy.
Hmm.
It's
That's why you
creepy
should
to think of Earth as a prisoner planet.
just act like Earth. I mean, just time doesn't exist. You're just kind of stuck here.
And it,
Because
yeah,
you've just, I guess to get away from like the more sciencey talk, but you've seen people who get stuck in a single moment of their life, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the quote unquote peaking of somebody's life.
hmm,
Then after that, it's all like downhill. So just because the sun and moon look like it goes around, or just because the Earth rotates or rotates around the sun, doesn't mean anything actually changes with the people inhabiting that planet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like what you're going with there. Because yeah, time does escape us. It's weird. But in terms of like subjective time, could it be possible to use reflection or self improvement or mindfulness meditation, or even casual applications of the way of observing thoughts and experiences to heighten our awareness of them in a way that keeps the passage of time from accelerating, or in your case, to keep it from stagnating, which is why I actually started with the book I did and that quote. And what I really liked was the part about humans as transitional beings and the idea that we are in a dynamic situation with unimaginable potential. And so that's where I think about, like, with mindfulness, not only are you becoming extremely aware of your surroundings and thus slowing time, it also seems to me that you're creating a sort of space to build unimaginable potential. You know, you're able to just take a minute to pause. You can go anywhere from there. I
Hmm.
just thought, I don't know, I really like that idea. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah, I like that idea, but it makes me kind of think of a different question, which is why does being preoccupied cost so much time? But you know,
Preoccupied with what though? Like
well,
what else
because
would it take space?
I guess in reference to, because Ayla's saying like this concept of mindfulness can help you kind of sort of either dilate or constrict time, or have better sort of relationship at not be at the mercy of time as much. And it would seem to me that the opposite of mindfulness is something like preoccupation. And so it makes me wonder, like, what is it about preoccupation that is so time consuming? And I
Hmm.
guess it's just like the obsession. Your mind goes places, because I deal with this in my own, for my own self. Like my mind will just go off somewhere, and like I wonder sometimes if there's a cost to that, as far as time. Like, is my brain spending an X amount of time going off somewhere into some other dimension of space or whatever? And
Like
Hmm.
am I incurring some sort of time debt by doing that too much?
like daydreaming?
Yeah, like daydream.
Hmm.
Time debt. I love it.
Yeah,
Oh,
because you would think that, like, if you're you're in a mindful mindset, then you would have the least amount of time debt. So perhaps if
Hmm.
you're daydreaming or spending your mind, time being mindful of other things, then you're incurring some sort of time debt.
Hmm.
I think it depends on your personality type. Like the always becoming thing is cool. Fixing with like Aztec metaphysics that we're all transitional and always moving towards something, but never being that thing. But with the like, if you are mindful of your situation all the time, I think that's a very good way to drive yourself insane. Especially if you're
Hmm.
more like artistic or creative, you need those moments of your brain abstracting away to some far other dimension or far other place. Otherwise, I think you might become a little bit too rigid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the they work together. I think like the daydreaming, the time debt, and then the mindfulness and the efficiency in getting stuff done. I think you need both because if you don't daydream, you may not think of a weird abstract way to do something that there's something in a new way that ends up saving more time. Or if you're just
Hmm.
mindful all the time of the situation, you might get caught in a routine, a nice little time loop, and then you're dead.
That's true. It's very true. I mean, you do end up dead. And
Yes, everybody ends up dead.
well, no, I was thinking as you were talking, like, you just make a really good point about the trade-offs of it. And if you look at life as suffering, as some people do, then those daydreams, that could be a distraction from the suffering. I don't know if you want to, because, like, well, I'm just, okay, case in point. When I had my leg injury and the pain was really bad, I could not do mindfulness because the mindfulness was like, wow, I can feel this and I can feel that. And the best advice I got was to distract myself. And I was playing Zelda and listening to music and watching movies all at the same time to distract myself. And time went a lot faster. Um, and I just bypassed the suffering. But it's also like, maybe had I tuned into the suffering a bit more, maybe there would have been some sort of fruit there. I don't know. I mean, that's like a really extreme example, but I'm just curious, Nick, about like the idea of time debt versus easing
Yeah.
of suffering or something
Well,
like
and
that.
that dovetails. I mean, that dovetails into kind of the current situation. At least, not to get into the personal stuff, but you've definitely you've had to pay that debt now that you don't have to worry about the excruciating pain. You know what
Oh
I mean?
yeah. Right, right.
So it's like it's one of those things where yeah, the distraction was a vital tool to get you out of that sheer immediacy of the pain. But now that the pain has become tertiary to the situation, I do believe that you're kind of paying a little bit of that time debt back.
That is true. And I think what he's referring to is the multiple mental breakdowns I have had over the last week. Physical therapy it's like you're just torturing yourself every hour on the hour and you're doing it to yourself. And, you have feelings about it, but it is
Mm.
interesting because I couldn't feel those feelings in the month of July. Now I get breaks in the pain, and so during the breaks, I'm like, "Ah!" just, like, paying all the debt, which is good. It's just fine. I think you have to just get it out of your system, but even
Mm.
that is weird, right? That's like a delayed experience of a past trauma, which you should say, "Live in the present and let it go and be free," but there's still something that's grasping onto that, um, which I'm working out, I think, but, uh
Mhm.
Go through.
yeah, working it through. Well, and to add 2 cents to that as well, much of this has to do with the perception of memory, right? So, like events, you're noticing things. And we find that in metaphysics, there's a connection of memory and personal identity. So, let's say you have we'll just go with Mike. So Mike, we're going to cut your head off. We're going to put my head on
That's
your
so mean.
body. I know, it's super mean. But the thing is that
Wait,
if
like
this
tonight?
new
Right now?
well,
Let's get this
Don't make
done.
any
I would say
promises.
October.
Yeah.
I say October. But yeah, but then there's this thing walking around with my head, your body. And then when you talk to it, it starts to relay Ayla's memories. You would be inclined to say, oh, well, that's Ayla now because of the memory thing. It's an identity thing. And this is why we always connect like personal identity with the brain. Um, and so what's my point? Oh, is that perhaps nowness and consciousness is where we need to devote more of our time because if it comes down to memories and if memories dial up and dial down our experiencing of time, right? The familiarity of things, our conscious experience of things, then it just starts to get really interesting because it almost seems that mindfulness is the vehicle that we really should be putting more research into, more thought into consciousness, and more study into how these are affecting the brain. And I do have a study to share, but I just thought, like, what do y'all think about that in terms of like time and consciousness and memory and speeding up, speeding down. Like it's just kind of a good
So,
soup.
no, it's a good suit. But I wonder if we sat in a room and talked about all the memories we had, right? Suppose that we could do that in a reasonable amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
God, that word. Uh, and so I got all of your memories and I've kind of implanted them into my own brain, through the use of false memories. And I started to talk about my memories or your memories like they were my memories. Am I now you? Or is it
And we
how,
get to
how
the
does that
ship of
Oh,
affect it?
Theseus again.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're getting down the rabbit hole now.
Because obviously, if we changed heads, then you still have the outward appearance of yourself. But if we are just conscious beings, riding this time wave out on some relative mass of rock until we disappear, can't I become you by extracting all of your memories and putting them in my head and behaving as
I,
if they
s-
were my own?
I suppose it depends if you retain your memories and if I'm trying to think. There's like several essays that are coming to mind because I know people have definitely thought about these scenarios and also they think about the varying levels of acceptability. So they think of it like relationally. So let's say all my memories get put into your brain, you're still you, but you end up using my references, you talk like me, you like have the same reactions to things like me, such that if Nick were to talk to you, it would feel like he's talking to me. If a relational person could sign off on like, "Oh, wow, like that's really so and so," and it gets the job done, there are some to say that it doesn't matter. That like it's just about like the interactions, which it does satisfy some and it doesn't satisfy others. But you
We're
know, it's
getting hauntingly close to the Turing test with
Mhm.
AIs.
exactly, exactly. No, I mean, there's so much to say about that stuff, but I think, bringing it back to the mind and the time connection, these are really interesting things to think about. And when we think about mindfulness, I mean, you guys tried mindfulness? Like, have you had
I don't
experience
know if
with
you
it?
can try it. It's not like Pepsi. I mean, if you had
It's
that
like a
new
No, it's
Coke
not.
test.
Zero, you had that new mindfulness.
No, I know.
No, I mean, yeah, it's definitely happened to me, and I do find mindfulness in certain environments more than others, for sure. Mindfulness has its use. I tend to try to be mindful when I'm enjoying things, and when I'm not enjoying things, less mindful. But that's just me being lazy about stuff. So don't do that.
Careful
Um,
of that time debt too.
yeah, right, exactly. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I definitely have had experiences of mindfulness. It's fine. It's okay.
It's fine.
It's cool, I guess. I mean, I don't know if you're going to be, floating off of the ground when you finally, reach that nirvana. But yeah, it is nice. It's nice to be able to be mindful, especially if there's something that's troubling you, or if you're, maybe predisposed to negative emotion. It's good to sort of try to be mindful so that you can check in with yourself, and as long as you're in a safe situation, then the thing that's looming over your head shouldn't be the thing that cripples you, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I like somebody once said that mindfulness brings you into the present and that it's been helpful with folks that have anxiety because they're constantly worrying about the future. So
mhm.
it's bringing you to the present, and it helps people with PTSD and depression because they're going off of maybe like past stuff. I mean, I'm not going to say everybody because this is like just hearsay, but but it takes the focus off of the past and it brings you back into not just the present, but into your embodied self, which, assuming you're in a safer spot when you're doing it, can reinforce experiences of safety. And so, with mindfulness, it was originally an ancient Buddhist meditation technique, but in recent years, it's evolved into a range of secular therapies and courses, most of them being focused on the present moment and noticing feelings and thoughts as they come and go. Now, what I thought was interesting and what I wanted to talk about was the latest data around the brain imaging that they have done on folks that are actively practicing mindfulness, because we can see now that this ancient practice can profoundly change the way different parts of our brain communicates with each other, and therefore how we think permanently. So, MRI scans will show that after an 8-week course of mindfulness practice, a person's fight or flight center, the amygdala, starts to shrink. So, the amygdala is the primal region of the brain. It's associated with fear and emotion. It's involved in the initiation of the body's response to stress. So, it's kind of like the old brain, like the animal brain in a way. And so, as the amygdala starts to shrink, they see that the prefrontal cortex associated with higher order brain functions like awareness, concentration, and decision making starts to become thicker. And the functional connectivity starts to change as well. So the connection between the amygdala, which is all like fight or flight, and the rest of the brain, it starts to get weaker, while the connections between the areas associated with attention and concentration get focused. Um,
Mm.
and so it's pretty amazing because basically through a sense of focusing on the present moment, you are basically like changing how your brain reacts to things. So before, when
Your
you're less,
consciousness is lifting iron.
what's that?
Your consciousness is pumping weights.
It's pumping weight. Yeah, it's flexing. Exactly.
Hmm.
100%. And what ends up happening is that our primal responses to stress start to become superseded and more thoughtful.
Hold on, Ayla. Your audio just went weird. Can you try that again?
Sure.
There you go.
Oh yeah, so I was just saying our more primal responses to stress seems to become superseded by more thoughtful ones. And I thought that was really cool. Basically, like the idea is like you get more agency, it feels.
Yeah, it's consciousness is a muscle, apparently. You know,
Right.
we don't necessarily think of it as one, but, practicing mindfulness exercises that muscle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm just putting together a bunch of different thoughts from like a decade of my life all of a sudden.
It's
Um,
cool, isn't it? Like
yeah, no. So consciousness as a muscle, you basically as you're mindful, you're taking in more information and rationalize, doing something rational with it, right?
Mhm,
Or something emotional, but there's usually a logic behind it, whereas these fear-based responses tend to be from a lack of information or a lack ability to pick up information. You end up
mhm,
finding out with this with anger, right? Well, like when you get mad about something, usually it's because you don't have all of the information about the event that happened, so you feel slighted
mhm,
and you're not willing to pick up information about it, so you just go straight to anger.
mhm.
um, so no, it makes sense that working your consciousness and this mindfulness will start to rewire your brain as you start to use your prefrontal cortex more than your amygdala to handle different situations.
Exactly. Well, and how interesting that it's mindfulness, but it's it's like altering the perception of time, right? Like you're becoming mindful, which means you're slowing down your experience of time, and then you start to move out of what's been called the monkey mind, as the hippies say, and you move into higher consciousness,
Yeah,
which is really
there,
cool.
there are there are some environments where this could be detrimental, though, where if time is a necessity and you don't have all the time, or you don't have like the commonly agreed upon time to work out a solution in your mind or to approach a situation with mindfulness,
Mhm,
you can become overwhelmed by. Now this could be just from a lack of working out your consciousness. Maybe there's somebody who is 100% mindful 100% of the time, but that seems, like I said earlier, insane. That would drive you crazy. You wouldn't be able to respond in certain situations. So
mhm.
I do worry though that sometimes monkey brain it might be the right answer to go to.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting to me why the default in the human brain isn't mindfulness. And
Mm,
I mean,
mhm,
it makes sense as to why it isn't, because you need to be able to build upon your memories in order to plan out your future. And that's the only way that we as humans brought ourselves up out of the consciousness muck that is all the living things on Earth. But
mhm.
it is kind of interesting to me that the default setting on a human isn't mindfulness, and it isn't necessarily immediacy, except for the early years of your life.
Yeah, I was thinking that too as you were talking, because it's like
Mhm.
as we get older, our perception of time speeds up. We're less mindful. We become more familiar with our world. We start moving through our world faster.
Mhm.
And we might start to develop adaptations to our environment based on trauma, based on experience, learned behavior, all because our brain's trying to predict what's going to happen. And that's where you have like implicit memory bias has you going into fight or flight and you don't even realize it's because you like heard a song that was really triggering. You're just like super messed up all of a sudden. And I think the brain starts collecting all these things. And maybe that's what really enforces that amygdala, and by mindfulness, you can start to beat it back and like rechange things.
Yeah,
For
but
sure.
I also don't necessarily think that, like having a foot in the past and one in the future isn't always a bad thing. Like
No.
it's the reason that we're here right now. It's the reason that we have computers. It's the reason that we have everything that we have in our modern world. Somebody was
Mhm.
looking forward in the future.
Mhm.
And so it is interesting to me that we kind of like as humans, we have one, maybe we have like a heel in the past and then the toes in the future and the middle part of the foot is in the present. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, and so we're kind of like this entity that operates in three different dimensions, third
Mhm.
dimension, obviously. But it is interesting to me that like there is a need for humans to not only be present, but to access the past and look into the future and bring all of that information into one, sort of holistic idea.
Keeps you
Right.
alive.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if
Mhm.
you're driving, it may not be the best time to be mindful about the car that's about to hit you, right? Like, oh, look at how beautiful that paint is. Look at the how the light reflects off of the hood. I wonder how the other person's day is going.
I
You think
would
it's going
say if
great?
it puts your body in a limp state, you will be more resistant to impact.
Yeah, but
JS.
ideally, you avoid the impact by
Fair
using that
enough.
fight or flight response to be like, I'm going to move the wheel this way. Up, dodged a bullet there.
Right, right,
Um,
right, right. Oh, that's an
and
interesting point. I like that. Yeah. It
and
has
I
its role.
and I do like this idea that like as a creature we have our I like to think of it as our eyes on different parts of the time. So like one eye in the past, one eye in the future, one eye in the present. And you try to keep your body in the present because otherwise you might become somebody that's ahead of their time or slow to their time. I don't know what the opposite of that is, but both seem bad. But I like how like yeah, you're right. If you can kind of pull the past and the future into the present and have the mindfulness aspect down, then you can um, elaborate the things that are going on and build things that are necessary for the future
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. And
without
things that heal the past.
without becoming
Yeah.
something like a Tesla or something, right? Because that
Right.
was a guy who's ahead of his time,
Right.
and everyone who's ahead of their time seems to get get the Galileo treatment.
Mm-hmm.
The Galileo treatment. Well, yeah, and to a little bit on that too, I like the idea of this quote that kind of runs in the middle of them. Both of what you're saying is that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I
Mm-hmm.
just like that too, because it's almost as if some of the mindfulness, it's just creating that space and that distance to choose to swerve or to choose to think about how beautiful the car that you're about to smash is.
It's really funny. It's like all of this stuff that is cutting edge science is stuff my grandma told me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It's like the older generations really had this understood. It's the count to 5 or count to 10. Are you
Oh, it
pissed
is the
off?
count to
Count
10.
to 10. Yeah. Like this isn't it's so funny the way scientists are like, we've come to this conclusion. And I'm like, yeah, my 70-year-old grandmother told me that when I was a child. Yeah,
But then
and her mother
again,
told her that, and her mother told her. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's
but
all of
there's a
that like
difference
old knowledge
between
that science is like
Mhm.
trying to, you know,
Unravel.
yeah.
Well, I also wonder if there's a difference between counting to 10 and, like looking around your room and like deep breathe. You know what I mean? Like I'm curious if you could pit the two against each other and
Well, the
see if there's
counting of
the
the 10 is
same.
a metaphor. It's you do count to 10, but it's also this concept that you're allowing yourself to cool down from a situation.
Mm,
And
mhm,
I was
mhm.
more referring to the concept of like, being able to choose your response to stimulus.
Right.
That's kind of what I meant. It's like
Ah,
this
yes.
concept of counting 10. It's like, well, that's when you get pissed off, you count to 10 and allow yourself to cool down from that stimulus so that you can choose an appropriate response.
Right, right,
And
right,
you're
right.
breathing in deeper, so you have more
Mm-hmm.
oxygen in your system.
Yep.
You're biologically changing your system, right?
Mm-hmm.
The mindfulness comes in though when you choose to instead of taking the route that this other person or whatever made you angry is dumb, right? You go, well,
Mhm.
why did I get angry in that situation? What were the things that I can control where I would not get angry? Or
Mm-hmm.
if it's some interpersonal dynamic, I like to think of like, what is it that the other person's doing that's making me angry? Because if I don't like something that they're doing, it might be a projection of something that I don't like in myself.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so that's where those mindfulness aspects can come in handy. Because then the next time that situation comes around, you could just it won't affect you in the same way. You won't have to count to 10.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I like that. Well, and I think it's interesting to just think about the mindfulness, slowing down. And, these are also like verbs of time. And it's weird because we don't even really know what time is. And like I'm just thinking in terms of this is where we're going to get to like this next phase of circular time, linear time, block universe theories of time. So to start with circular time and kind of what Nick was saying, um, there are conceptions of time and its offshoots that align with ancient wisdom. For example, the Australian Aboriginal people, they don't perceive time as an exclusively linear category, so past, present, future. They often place events in a circular pattern of time, according to which an individual is in the center of time circles, and events are placed in time according to their relative importance for the individual and his or her respective community. So the more important events are perceived as being closer in time. Um, and in fact, it's such an important difference in the perception of time that it contributes to the limited ability of standard assessment procedures in psychiatry when they're treating Aboriginal people, that their metrics don't work the same way because the time is fucking it up. And I thought that was super cool.
Mm.
Let's
Yeah,
see. Yeah.
I like it. I like that concept. I think it's interesting to have a pulled back view of time, whereas like Aborigine culture, their our concept of time is a straight line, but it's
Mhm.
only because we haven't pulled the lens back to see that it's actually a circle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that the Aboriginal culture has had the lens pulled back in the past and able to see time as that circle. Whereas many cultures see time as sort of like just this line.
Yeah. And it feels weird as a line too when you start to really think about it.
Well,
Because
it
so
is a
many.
line, but it's the line zoomed in. It's a circle, and like when you're walking the perimeter of a circle and you zoom all the way in, it looks like a line.
Yeah, the dimensionality of
Mm.
time. So
Hmm.
Mhm.
like 1D, it's like a like you said, a single line, 2 dimensional becomes a circle. I like to think of it more as like a spiral from
Mhm.
like from you're born and you're in that center and you kind of you have your experiences as you go around it. But if you're learning, then you can start to change the way you handle the same situation or situations that are similar. That's kind of changing. If you have like a time to response graph or something, you can start to chart where like your responses to certain environmental stimuli change based off of your past. And hopefully, if you're
Mm.
doing things just right, it starts to create a spiral. Because to me, a time circle implies that you make the same decisions over and over and over again, given the
Mm.
same stimuli. When
Mhm.
hopefully you're growing as a human to, make a different decision that will be better for you according to your nature.
Mm. I like that. I really like that. I like the spiral idea, and it also plays into that idea of like choice, and kind of adapting and things like that. What's interesting, so to contrast that to linear time, where our subjective sense of time seems to flow in one direction, it's why we remember the past and not the future. So linear. Hawking claims that our brain measures time in a way where disorder increases in the direction of time. We never observe it working in the opposite direction, which doesn't make a
Benjamin
lot of
Button
sense.
disease.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, totally. I
That's,
mean, but
that's what
it's
that's what he was
weird.
talking about.
Yeah, right. Like the disorder and so it's just funny because even the brain likes order and we like prediction. And so I mean not we, but the brain, like it's like a little computer and it's cataloging everything. Um, which I think is interesting because maybe if it didn't operate that way, we could conceive of other realities of time, but
Yeah.
because it just seems chaotic, we just like don't bother with it.
Well, it also seems to me that the standard assumption about time is that everything ends in entropy, which is true, but it's like halfway through the circle, right?
Mm,
Because the ending in entropy breeds new beginnings, and
right.
then something new is born out of that. And so, but
Broader
it is
universes.
interesting because, and I think it is because we're very egotistical, and so we think of time as, well, time ends when I'm gone. And so if everything is hurtling towards entropy, then there can't possibly be anything after that because I'll be gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, clearly makes total
Which
sense.
it does kind of make sense when you're thinking about yourself, for sure, but
Mhm.
that doesn't necessarily mean that things don't continue afterwards.
Are you that look as a solipsist? I take high offense to
Oh,
that,
I take
sir.
high offense to it as well. Trust me, I don't like saying things like that.
I know. I don't think I've ever heard Nick say something like that without like grimacing vocally.
Yeah,
Well,
grosses me out.
imagine whenever whenever the end of time comes, I often wonder if that's like the death of deities, or like the
Mm.
death of suppose there's something out there that made all of this. Does that end? Does that thing end because there's now no way to do anything, right? Like before the Big Bang, there was nothing. If we're a part of a daughter universe, some multiverse, eventually the stack has to stop somewhere, right? There's a
Mm.
base universe that was born everything. If it was a waterfall effect, then maybe we have to do something to start over the universe. Or
Yeah,
if this one ends, the next one begins, does all that stuff start over, or the new god, the new gods become reborn as infantile, and we got to go through all the
Oh,
chaos again?
maybe,
maybe.
or they have a seat outside of the whole arena that entirely.
Well,
And
that's just
so
rude.
you can just see the contraction, the expanding and contracting of the universe, like the breathing in and out of the lungs, right? It's like
Yeah.
everything is being breathed out right now, and eventually it's all going to be breathed back in and then expelled again.
Oh, you're freaking me out, man. That's exactly what I saw when I was on my ketamine adventure. Was just this breathing, snaking serpent of a lava lamp folding in on itself with like multiple loopholes and portals and like all this crazy stuff. And it was breathing, and it was like you could witness all of it, and it was so far. Like Earth was so tiny. Um, I didn't like that. I
Mm.
Yeah,
didn't like that. It was really
pretty
weird.
significant when you go far back enough. Like if you put your mind into space somewhere far away and try to find Earth, it just looks like another dot, right?
It's
Barely can
yeah.
even see it.
Right, much less your home, your city, your room, like your little belongings, it's weird. Well, and this is good stuff because now we're entering into the block universe theory of time, which I thought was kind of cool. Um, Einstein long ago showed that time is relative. It passes more slowly for an object moving faster than another object. In this relative world, an absolute now is more or less meaningless. Time, then, is not some separate quality that impassively flows around us. Time is rather, quote, part of a complicated geometry woven together with the geometry of space. And I didn't clarify. So the first part of time being relative was Einstein, but the second part, that's from theoretical physicist Carlo Rovelli, who adds that time is an illusion. Our naive perception of its flow doesn't correspond to physical reality. He posits that reality is just a complex network of events onto which we project sequences of past, present, and future. Which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that the concept where your body moving through time and space becomes a second variable? And it's like all your iterations throughout time become its own thing?
Well, I just thought he was talking about the fact that like time doesn't really exist. We're the ones that kind of put time into existence through observation, right? Am I
So,
missing something?
a little bit.
Well, look,
Okay.
so what it sounds like, right? Um, but
Well, he's
the
saying it's
woven
not
together. Go for it.
well, I think he's just saying it's not subjective, like Einstein would say, like yeah, we did make it up, but we're still perceiving of it subjective to humans, to Earth, to us. Whereas Carlo's saying that there's something bigger going on with time that's very woven and complicated.
Within the geometry of space, because
Mm.
yeah, we define time as like the discrete unit of all subatomic larger objects moving in some span, right? And then I guess if you want to count all the iterations, past, present, and future, different ones, you can also line that up somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But the time is an illusion thing. I think gets closer to the thing that some conscious being needs. It needs this thing of time in order to try to have that idea of, in order to just make sense of its world, right? It just
Mm.
has to. It's without it, we would be bumbling. We wouldn't know what to do really, right? Because we need the past to live in the present and try to build a future. But I'm not too sure about the past and future iterations of ourselves. I don't know if they're all connected or not.
I know. I watched a video one time and it was talking about like fourth dimension, fifth dimension, sixth, seventh, etc. And there was one dimension where it talks about our past and future and present iterations as one like unit,
Point.
as one point. Yeah. And I think right about there, I was like,
Fifth dimension.
It would
yeah,
make
didn't get very far.
fix fix one point that I see it more as like branching. So like everything you've done in your past, and the person who you're right now is obviously based off of past decisions or memories or whatever. So it's a single branch out, and then you have multiple branches towards the future. The person you could become, you know.
Mm.
And maybe like I can see how that's all connected that way. And you're picking one branch at every time, and this goes for every single thought or action you have, because that
That's
Yeah.
creates
It's
beautiful.
different.
just a yes no machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Oh,
It's
it
one
is.
long yes no machine. Which makes me wonder too: is can time exist without movement?
Um, sure. Why not?
Why? How? Why? What would it exist for? I mean, it seems to me that time is an intricate sort of
So do you
mechanism to measure movement.
do you consider should we consider age as movement? I guess.
Yeah, revolutions around the sun.
No, I mean like what about ourselves, right?
Yeah, we're
Ourselves don't revolve
constantly
around the
moving.
sun.
Yeah.
They're moving around. They're being born, living, and then dying, right? But
Hmm.
they don't have to move in geometric space.
Well, we do as our bodies. We're
Yeah,
just amalgamation of the cells. I'm
yeah,
just
but
saying, and every atom is a movement of particles around a nucleus. So it's
so
like,
like if you froze all of that, then
yeah,
would time exist?
right.
Sure, it
Time
just
would
wouldn't go
stop.
anywhere.
Yeah.
It just doesn't go forward or backwards. Then it just, but it
Right.
would
There'd
it
just be a
exist?
pause.
I guess, yeah, yeah. You're on a. There's a book
Time
called
pause.
yeah called Einstein's Dreams. And it's this fictional book about what Einstein dreamt when he was coming up with the theory of relativity. And there's a question where it's like, or there's a part of it where he has this dream that the way that time operates is that it just stops for a long time and then it picks up again. So like we
Hmm.
wouldn't notice it because we're in it, right? We're always flowing. But if you got out of the dimension of time, you would see that for long periods of what they would call time, we're just not moving at all. So yeah, it's like you're taking a snapshot, I guess, of that time, and then that snapshot just lasts
You mean
forever.
we'd be like a star billions of years ago, not moving, possibly dead, 4 years to find out?
And then that leads me to my next question: why does gravity influence time?
Fuck if I know. I
I know
still
because it creates a well on the time space, fabric. But I mean, what the fuck does that mean?
no, I know. I
It
know.
influences movement. Mm.
Influences the movement and the gravity of the things and all of that. Yeah. I don't know.
It's trippy. It's
It is.
trippy. Well, and I think this is a good time to give our brains a break on the sciencey stuff of it, and just think about the myths that we tell ourselves, right? So again, we're talking about the mind-time connection. So I started thinking about the gods dealing with time. Do you guys have any favorite time gods that come to mind?
The child eater Kronos, of course.
Cronus. You're a boy.
Nom, nom, nom.
Yeah.
Om nom nom. Yeah, well, and he was actually one of the first empirical, linear, progressive, and historical time gods, divided into past, present, and future. He's also part of the reason that we have quotes like "Time spent is time lost forever." What is gone is gone. The past is only prologue. Tomorrow is a new, never before seen day. Which is interesting because came after another Greek god, Aeon, who is a Hellenistic deity associated with time. Also, the orb and the circle encompassing the universe and the zodiac. And the time which Aeon represented is perpetual, unbounded, ritual, and cyclical. Cyclic.
Hmm.
Cyclic? That's a weird word.
Cyclical is fine.
Okay, cyclical.
Mhm.
Well, it's spelled out Cyclic in my notes. I'm just like, maybe I just forgot an AL.
Cyclic.
Cyclic. It's weird. But it's basically saying like the future is a returning version of the past, later called Avum. Um, and it's reflected in modern mottos like what goes around comes around. Here we go again. Same stuff, different day. You'll catch it the next time around. And I thought that was interesting just in the Greek, um, pantheon or whatever, that you did have the older Greek gods having this circular time concept, and then the newer Greek god having more of a linear rooted one. Um,
Mhm.
and then we can even go like the Igbo tribe in Africa. They have Ikenga. Now he is portrayed as having two faces. So one face looks at the old year while the one other face looks at the new year. And I thought that was kind of interesting because it makes me think like, well, the God himself is in the middle of it all. So the God is in the present, and then he has one face to the left, one to the right. I don't know, that might be a bit of a stretch, but I was pushing that mindfulness close to godliness kind of concept.
Mhm.
I don't know if that resonates with y'all. And interestingly enough, in some of like the Hinduism, Egyptian, like some of the other different religions that I looked through, the time gods also correlated as fate gods. And I thought that was really interesting that time and fate were interwoven. Obviously so because you got the future, but I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool.
Mhm.
No, it's pretty cool. Did you get around to a time? Was it Nietzsche's time demon thought experiment? You heard
Oh
about that?
man,
X
that's
the X the reference from True Detective. It's
yeah.
talking about.
Go for it.
Sure. So in your life, there's you're about to die. There's a demon that pops up and tells you that you have to live your life again. You're going to make all the same decisions and all the same things are going to happen. And I think this is why the notion is frightening, why it's at least easier, more comforting to think is time as a linear thing. Um, and this happens pretty much every time you die. And the only time that it doesn't, once you're like, if you say, like I'm gonna relive it and try to change everything, then you go back, but you end up doing the same thing. But once you're happy with all the decisions that you've made, or that you can say that you're happy to relive that whole thing, then you've lived like a good life. Right?
Mhm.
Mm.
So the time is a flat circle. What the fuck is that, Nietzsche? That's that thought experiment.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very Buddhist. Getting yourself out of dukkha in order to get to nirvana eventually. I mean, it makes sense. Dude, I like to think about that concept once in a while because, assuming that, things continue to go well going forward, I think that trying to live a decent life that you can look back at and live all over again is probably the goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
But
that's
this is
that's what you'd want. You'd want to live a life that was good enough to live over again.
With fewer
yeah.
mosquito bites.
sometimes fate is not so kind to people, right? So if you had a
Well, yeah, of
tragic life,
course.
you know,
Yes.
if you the, even in a tragic life, this is, I guess, finding like the happiness and the suffering, or the heaven and the hell. Um, if you can do that too, then that is also a decent life, which is, I think, might be a little bit harder than
Oh, much
uh,
harder.
yeah, just to live a decent
A
life
good
where everything
life.
goes
Yeah.
well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think it's also one of those things where it's like everyone has their own brand of suffering. Like, I know people who, I don't know, maybe they spill something on their favorite shoes, and that's like the end of the day for them because the shoe was some symbolic thing to them and they have this weird association. For me, I just throw the shoes away or buy new shoes or something. But like everyone's super unique and like all their troubles, I think, tailored to them. But then there are exceptional circumstances where people just go through horrific stuff. And I wonder if part of that exercise is to reflect on like how not to make it worse, because it's like if you're going through something terrible, and this is something I'm learning, even with this accident that I'm going through now, it's kind of like, well, if I'm feeling this way about it, or if I give in to being emo and angsty, I really just deprive myself of that day's possibilities. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some times where it just feels really good to be like, I'm just going to have a do nothing day. Um, and that's Tuesday. And then the next day, you might pick it up and do something else. And so I think as long as you can look back and be like, yeah, like I did my best and I feel good about it, that's like all you can really do.
And
Um,
sometimes you decide to live the sorrows over again because they get juxtaposed by the joys.
mhm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, that's true
there's a
too.
lot of people that would choose, many reliving many sorrowful events because there is a layer of joy that they cherish.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, well, like I'm working on this invention now related to my situation. And if it goes well, this could be what makes me a millionaire. So just stay tuned, guys.
There we go.
Stay tuned. We're about to get that $20,000 soundboard.
Hey,
Just give me some time.
nice.
Sometimes too, there's a lot of good emotional work that can be done in those sorrowful states,
Mhm.
hmm
and like the sort of, I don't know if it's reflection, I don't know if it's indulgence, but there's a, you can really come to enjoy those for being sad, sorrowful moments. It's like enjoying the tragedy in life. It's a, there's a weird thing you can do with it where it's not, there's no material gain in it, there's no joy in it, it's, you learn to enjoy the thing for the thing in itself.
Unless your Pandora subscription fucks you, because that was me. That was me last week. I was wanting to have like a day of just, all right, I'm just gonna feel all the feelings, and so I like put my Pandora station on, and I set it to like the Morrissey channel because he's got that song like he's just kind of sad.
It's been a fun 50 days, I'll tell you that.
God.
But anyway, it only played all of his upbeat songs. And so I'm sitting there like wanting to just cry myself into a puddle and drown my emotions. And these
Mm.
fucking songs are so upbeat and happy that I'm like, God damn it. Then I went on with my day. But it's just like, it's just funny because I know what you mean. Like sometimes it just feels really good to just nurture what you're feeling. And then sometimes you can't and you just move past it and you're
But you gotta
angry
learn
now.
to enjoy that though. You have to learn to enjoy the happy songs
I
when all you want to
know.
do is listen to sad songs.
Just
I know.
enjoy everything or else.
Yes.
or else your dog will come and like lick your knee and be really cute and just dogs. Spelled backwards for God for a reason, I think. Let's see here. Okay, so just talking about like the different time gods, I was curious. Okay, so it seemed like a lot of the gods arose out of observations of the natural world. So like the sun rising, the moon setting, the seasons. And so I'm just thinking, like, if we were to have new gods based on newly observed cosmological events like black holes, exoplanets, interstellar objects, What could those gods be? And what could they be in charge of? Do you think we'll
It,
ever have a
it
new
wouldn't
god?
be. It would be the god of TikTok, and he'd be in charge of doing weird anime dances.
Oh, Jesus, please no.
That's what it would be.
Well,
When-
maybe
God of
if we
TikTok.
bring any new gods in, that's what it's gonna be.
I mean, because from civilizational standpoint, they're do we have no more new gods? Do we have all the gods we're ever gonna have?
Well, no, we just disguise our belief in things, and replace God with that. That's all. We're never going to lose God. It's just that we're going to be using that energy elsewhere.
I think you need a big collapse of nation states for that to happen.
Yeah, but okay, so 20,000 years into the future, we got to have new gods. Or what if there's no gods? I don't know. And then what would a black hole god be? I don't even
destructor.
know.
Yeah,
maybe a creator.
Rebirth.
Or something on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Transporter god.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Gotta travel. Like a messenger god, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I can see that.
Yeah, gather up the matter on one side of the universe and spit it out on the other.
Ooh, a recycling god.
Yeah, exactly. It's the garbage disposal of space.
It's a job. Somebody's got to do it.
I'd hate to see the temple for that.
It would be the
a lot of sacrifices.
Just be a lot of trash. All right. Well, okay. So speaking of time, it's getting close to the end. So apparently, that physicist that I mentioned earlier thinks that time is going to end in 5 billion years. A National Geographic article talks about how our universe has existed for nearly 14 billion years. And as far as most people are concerned, it should continue to exist for billions of more years after that. But according to a new paper, there's one theory for the origins of the universe that predicts time itself will end in just 5 billion years, coincidentally, right around the time that our sun is slated to die. Put another way, further away, older galaxies only seem to be moving faster because in the past, time was faster. If he's right, in a few billion years, everything will be frozen like a snapshot of one instant forever.
That's terrifying.
I don't like that either.
It's like a projection screen. Well, the entire universe will just be like a frame on a cell.
What if it's you ever been on one of those ships that on the Carnival that swing up and down? So it goes forward for another 5 billion years, and it stops, and then everything starts going backwards in the opposite direction.
Cool. Could you imagine being dead for 4 billion years, and then all of a sudden you're on your deathbed again? Like, the fuck, I'm going backwards.
Yes.
The hell?
Does that sort of hint towards holographic universe then, though? Because if the universe gets to a point where it's in complete stasis and it freezes still, is that a method of just no more energy being left in the universe, or is it that the projection mechanism just stopped working?
Well, in this case, it actually comes out of a calculation assumption, from what I understand. So the prediction comes from the theory of eternal inflation, which says that our universe is part of the multiverse. And this vast structure is made up of an infinite number of universes, each of which can spawn an infinite number of daughter universes. But
it's so bizarre that we think of things like this.
Oh, I know. I absolutely know. Well, and what's interesting is it comes down to like the Hubble number again, right? So the Hubble number, Hubble constant, it's something that we are continually tweaking and fixing, but it's the number that helps us with all of our other calculations. Basically it's like, if you believe in one thing, it needs to be able to address and answer questions about everything. Otherwise, it doesn't hold up. And so far, the Hubble constant's been holding up with modest revisions. But for this one, when they calculate the, so let's see here. So because the universe is possibly infinite and you could have multiple universes, kind of hard to do calculations on that because it just keeps going. So the mathematical approach that they use, it's called geometric cutoffs. So that involves taking a finite swath of the multiverse and calculating probabilities based on that limited sample. Which, I mean, like,
What if
it's
what if there's like an edge of the universe and it's just that in 5 billion years Earth is going to go over the edge?
like a flat universe.
Yeah, totally. Flat universe, baby. I like
I mean,
that.
there's no
I'm a
evidence
round
to say
earther, but I'm a
not.
flat universer.
Oh God. Oh no. I mean, I don't know what's more terrifying, that we're gonna have a frozen universe or that we fall off of a slab of
precipice.
something.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It'll all stop and then fall apart. It'll be fine. Don't worry. You won't be around to see it.
Unfortunately, that would be something to see. I tell you that. That's
Oh.
one way to go.
Imagine being stuck in one moment in time for the
Yeah.
Oh,
forever.
man.
Forever.
I do kind of like the idea of it being like a roller coaster. We go up, we hit the max, then we come back down, then we go back up, and then we come back down, and we just keep reincarnating, and we get the Nietzsche eternal currents thing. It's just backwards,
Yeah,
and then
I think-
forward again, and then backward again, and then forward again, and then backward again.
It's all multiverse.
Oh my God, until like at one point you only exist for like a minute, right? Because if it's losing momentum, and then it fucking freezes again.
What would be the scariest part of life? Would it be being at the final expansion point of the universe or the final contraction point? Because I think it would be even scarier if it was going the other way, where like our universe is headed towards a contraction point where everything is going to become a singularity.
Yeah, that
So-
doesn't sound good. As somebody
I
who
don't
just broke some bones, it does not feel good. I don't want to be
That sounds
crunched.
like a lot of collision.
Yeah.
Do not want to be
But it's
crunched.
gonna happen so fast you won't even feel it.
Maybe.
In theory, what if time is freezing?
Or you just
and
start seeing
slower
all
and
the
slower?
stars explode in the sky, and then you
Oh,
know that
that's
you
so
only have
cool.
like,
That is so dope.
it would be pretty crazy.
Yeah, it'd be really cool for a second.
And then it would just turn, all the stars in the sky would start to coalesce into one giant sun, and then we would just hurtle towards that big ball of light.
That'd be
That
so.
would be freaking nuts.
There's
Oh my God.
there's
Would be
there's
nuts.
this thing what was another one of his dreams, and Einstein's dreams were like the world's ending, like time's ending, this thing, and people have like a few days to live out their lives however they want, and it turns out to be like this peaceful utopia as we
Oh my
drift
God.
off into the void.
Because of course it would be.
Yeah.
The final moments of humanity are just going to be beautiful, and then we're going to sit there and be like, "What the fuck, you guys? We could have been doing this whole time."
Honestly. Just gotta chill.
Humans have no chill, you know that.
I know,
The whole
seriously.
mindfulness conversation is about developing the chill.
Honestly. Well, so the physicist that gave us the time is going to stop scenario, he was also interviewed in The Guardian a few years before he published that book. I'm sure he's not happy about this, though, because in the interview, he talks about how he had taken LSD a few times, and it turned out to be the seed of his interest in physics generally. And in the question of time specifically, here's what he said about it. He said, among the strange phenomena was the sense of time stopping. Things were happening in my mind, but the clock was not going ahead. The flow of time was not passing anymore. It was a total subversion of the structure of reality. I had hallucinations of misshapen objects, of bright and dazzling colors, but I also recall thinking during the experience and asking myself what was going on. And I thought, well, it's a chemical that is changing things in my brain. But how do I know that the usual perception is right and this is wrong? If these two ways of perceiving are so different, what does it mean that one is the correct one? And I think that's pretty
There
much
need to
where
be
my
studies on the effects of LSD and what it's done for us in science and technology. I
Oh,
bet you a
just gonna
pretty
go
penny. I bet you a pretty penny that LSD has been the inspiration for many a thing.
Like MK
well,
Ultra.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, even NASA, I was going to share this too, but I was like thinking I was getting close to time on this show. But NASA was doing or there was an article about NASA doing research into using psilocybin for astronauts. Now they say it's to help them cope with loneliness and emotions while in space, but there was like another divergent conversation in that article about whether or not it could be used to enhance creative problem solving in situations that would require a bending of the human mind in order to adapt. And I was like, dude, that would be crazy. And then
And then
also,
you got to think of the effects of the neuroplasticity in 0G, right?
oh,
The
Jesus.
psilocybin reworking the neuroplasticity. It probably works better in zero gravity.
Well, and then wouldn't that be some shit if it's like if they're in zero gravity and they're doing that stuff and then they have like peak mindfulness and then they unlock the time traveling or the time stopping entity and singularity starts right there. I don't know. I mean, I'm just going crazy now, but I do think it's just funny to think about the mind and time connection and how slowing things down can actually change our brain and how our brain can actually change our reality, our consciousness understanding of the lives that we live. It's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, time doesn't exist. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Just behave like it doesn't exist, and you do wonderful, meaningful things.
Throw out the clocks.
Time is the construct, and I am a clock.
I love it. I love it. Well, did you guys want to add anything? That's all I got.
That was great.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
You want to go for another 2 hours?
Oh boy.
That's cool.
Ooh, I could tell you when the next leap second's going to happen. Not.
Oh boy.
Oh, great.
Awesome.
Whoa. We just had it. In July 2021, the International Earth Rotation and Reference System Service announced that no leap second will be introduced at the end of December 2021. What? We were supposed to get our leap second this year, but they took it away. They said they
turned on the Hadron Collider.
Dude, they said the next, quote, possible date is June 30, 2022. However, the Earth's rotation has been speeding up lately, so it is becoming increasingly unlikely that any leap seconds will be added in the near future. Oh, the fuck? That could be an episode. What in the heck? Normally, we need to do one leap second every 1.5 years. Now, all of a sudden, we don't need it because the Earth is speeding up.
Mm-hmm.
Heading towards the black hole.
As we barrel towards chaos.
Let's do it, finally.
Yeah, there's an article, Earth is in a Hurry in 2020.
Yeah, to get humans off of it. That's what it's trying to do.
Or perhaps
shaking us off.
Perhaps it's the global preoccupation that's made time go faster.
Oh, we're all being
the
super
collective
mindful.
Consciousness. Nope. We're not being
the other way.
We're being preoccupied.
What are we preoccupied with?
Oh,
what's
I don't
been
know.
happening the last?
The mass trauma that's been occurring for the past 20 months.
Look, I have my own traumas to deal with. Okay, I don't need any mass trauma to add on to it. All right.
Right.
I do think it's pretty cool that we have an International Earth Rotation and Reference System Service that exists.
Well, I mean, it would be interesting to see if we actually did cause Earth to speed up because of our preoccupation.
I know. I mean, we could be some of the last people to have lived through leap seconds. Nevermore.
Back in my day, the Earth turned slower.
Oh,
that's a legit thing I could say now.
Just think about it though. When we die, we will have lost 1.5 seconds times every 1.5 years that we've been alive. No, 1 second time. Okay, so if we live another 40 years, that times 1.5
doesn't. I mean, you don't. If you don't get the leap, you don't lose anything.
Oh,
the leap is an add-on.
I win.
I guess you're right.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Ayla, for that fun episode. That was a great conversation into the correlation between mind and time perception. I hope that everybody enjoyed that out there. I know I did for sure. So thank you so much, Ayla, for bringing that to the table.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and thank you so much, you guys, for listening. We really appreciate it. We are on every Monday night at 8 p.m. Please be sure to give us a comment and maybe a thumbs up and perhaps a subscription to our YouTube page. That would really help us out. We're almost at 30 subscribers. We can feel it. We're so close. Two more
close.
subs left.
2 more.
And we just very much appreciate you guys taking the time to listen. And thank you so much. So we will catch you next Monday. And until next time, Cognauts, you stay out there, and we will catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Later.